The woman was trying to disappear. She had gotten really good at it over the years. She knew how to tuck herself into dark spots where nobody would look. She knew how to make herself super small. She even taught her kids to breathe real quiet when car lights passed by. But tonight, she messed up. She was sitting under some construction stuff at the Georgetown waterfront. The rain was coming down super hard, beating on the cardboard she had put down so they wouldn't have to sit in puddles. Jordan Caldwell did the one thing she always told herself not to do. She looked up. It was just for a tiny second. Just to see if the car was going to drive away. But it didn't. The big black Escalade just sat there. The engine was still running. The windshield wipers were going back and forth real fast. The headlights cut through all the rain like giant flashlights. And there, in the back seat, a man leaned forward to get a better look. The light hit his face. Jordan felt like her heart just stopped beating. 5 years. It had been 5 whole years of running. 5 years of hiding in different places. 5 years of telling herself over and over that she would never, ever see that face again. Min. The man she had married in secret. The most dangerous man she had ever loved. And he was looking right at her through the rain. But wait. He wasn't really looking at her. His eyes were locked on something else. He was staring at the 2 little kids she had pressed tight against her chest. 2 kids with skin dark like hers but with eyes exactly like his. Eyes nobody could mistake. These were kids he didn't even know were alive. The little boy, curious about the big car, looked up. He wasn't scared like his mom. He just wanted to see. And right then, something big changed in the world. Because Min Ma, the man who ran half the secret business on the East Coast, the man who hadn't felt surprised by anything in forever, he saw his own face looking back at him from a 4-year-old boy. And nothing in his life would ever be the same again. Look, I need to pause for just a second. This story isn't like those fake romance movies. It's about survival, lies, and what people will do to protect the ones they love. If you want to know what happens next, and this is just the beginning, hit subscribe now. Drop your city in the comments so I know where you're watching from. I read every comment. I see you night owls and lunch break listeners. Smash that subscribe button and let's continue. Min didn't even wait for his driver to stop him. His hand grabbed the door handle and pushed it open before his brain could even catch up with what was happening. Sir, his driver tried to say something. But Min was already stepping out into the rain. The water hit him like someone throwing buckets at him. It was cold. Really cold. His suit jacket, the one that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, got completely soaked in like 10 seconds. The rain was dripping from his perfect hair down his face. He didn't care one bit about any of that. Jordan looked up at him from where she was huddled under the construction stuff. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody talked. They just stared at each other while the rain kept pouring down. She looked so different now. Skinnier than before. Her face had lost all the softness he remembered. Now she looked harder, like someone who had seen too many bad things. Her eyes had that look people get when they stop believing good stuff will ever happen to them. But those eyes, her big brown eyes, they were still the same ones he remembered. The eyes that used to look at him like he was more than just his father's son. Like he was actually worth something real. Jordan, he said, and his voice cracked a little when he said her name. He hadn't said it out loud in so long. He made himself stop saying it years ago because it hurt too much. Jordan, what? Don't, she cut him off. Her voice was flat. She sounded so tired. She pulled both kids tighter against her body, like she was trying to make them part of her, like she could protect them with just her skin and bones. Don't come any closer, Min. He stopped walking. He just stood there with rain running down his face. His hands hung at his sides. He didn't move. The little girl, maybe 4 years old, was crying softly against her mom's shoulder. Her little fingers were gripping Jordan's wet shirt super tight. But the boy was different. The boy was watching Min with eyes that looked way too old for his little face. He looked ready to protect his mom. Ready to fight a grown man if he had to. His little jaw was set tight. My son, Cumin thought, and the feeling almost knocked him down to his knees right there in the rain. That's my son standing there. Jordan, he made his voice steady even though nothing inside him felt steady at all. Please. Just tell me what happened. Tell me why you. I didn't leave you. The words came out of her like they were breaking as she said them. Like glass that's been cracking for years and finally shatters. Is that what you think? That I left because I wanted to? Everyone told me. Everyone lied to you. Now, here's something Cumin didn't know as he stood there in the rain. He didn't know that Jordan had been running for 5 whole years, not from him, but from people who worked for him. People inside his own organization. He didn't know that on the night she disappeared, some men had come to their apartment and pressed a knife right against her pregnant belly. Men who knew exactly where she lived, when she slept, what side of the bed she liked. Everything. He didn't know that his own mother, the same woman who called him every single Sunday, who sent birthday cards to his office, who cried big tears at his father's funeral, she was the one who sent those men to threaten Jordan. And he really didn't know that during those 5 years, Jordan hadn't just been hiding. She'd been collecting stuff. Recording conversations when she cleaned houses where important people met. Taking pictures of documents when nobody was looking. Building up a big pile of evidence that could bring down everything his family had spent 3 whole generations building. She wasn't just some victim running scared. She was more like a bomb that hadn't gone off yet. But we'll get to all that stuff later. Right now, all Cumin knew was that his wife was standing in the pouring rain. His kids were cold and wet. And for the first time in 5 years, he had a chance to maybe fix something that got broken. Come with me, Cumin kept his voice real low and calm. He talked the way he did when he really needed someone to trust him. Just get in the car. Get warm and dry. We don't have to talk about anything else tonight. We don't have to figure it all out right now. Jordan shook her head. Her wet hair stuck to her face. You don't understand. If I go with you, you'll be safe. Safe? She let out a laugh that didn't sound happy at all. Do you even know what that word means anymore? Do you remember what safe actually feels like? While they were talking, the little boy tugged on Jordan's wet sleeve. His lips were starting to look kind of blue from the cold. Mommy, he said in a small voice. I'm cold. Really cold. Something in Jordan's face changed when he said that. The hard shell she'd been holding up, just for a moment, it cracked a little bit. She looked down at her son. Then at her daughter who was still crying softly. Then at the man standing in the rain, looking at her like she was the only important thing left in his world. Jordan had been running for 5 years. 5 years of sleeping in shelters and super cheap motels. 5 years of working jobs where people paid cash and didn't ask questions. 5 years of watching her babies grow up without knowing anything about their dad except that he died before you were born. She was just so tired. Okay, she finally said. The word came out sounding like she was giving up a fight she'd been in for too long. But I'm not promising anything. Don't think this means everything's fixed. I'm not asking for promises, he said. I'm not expecting anything. Cumin moved real slow and careful, like you would around a scared animal. No sudden movements. Nothing that might spook her into running again. He took off his completely soaked suit jacket. The expensive one. He held it out toward the boy, toward Theo. But he didn't force it on him. He just waited for the boy to take it himself. Theo looked up at his mom first, asking with his eyes if it was okay. She gave him a tiny nod. The boy reached out and took the jacket. It was way too big for him, but it was better than nothing. The little girl, Nari, surprised everyone by putting her arms up toward Cumin, like she wanted him to pick her up. Kids can sense stuff sometimes, even when they don't understand what's happening. Cumin gently lifted her up. She was so light. So small. Like she didn't weigh anything at all. She smelled like rain and that cheap soap they give out at shelters. She was his daughter. He had a daughter. And as he carried her toward the waiting car with its heater running, something that had been frozen inside his chest for 5 years started to crack open. Something he'd locked up tight and told himself was gone forever. Hope. It was small. It was fragile. It was probably stupid to even feel it. But it was there. Jordan climbed into the big Escalade with Theo pressed tight against her side. When the heat from the vents hit her wet skin and clothes, she almost started crying right there. Almost. But Jordan had learned a long, long time ago that crying didn't fix anything. Tears were a luxury for people who had their own address and full refrigerators. People who didn't need to count coins to buy food. Q-Min slid into the seat beside her. Nari had already fallen asleep against his shoulder, totally worn out from being scared and cold and confused. For a long moment, nobody in the car said anything. The driver pulled back onto the road. The wipers kept beating back and forth across the windshield. The fancy car moved smooth through the wet streets. The city lights blurred past the windows, all smeared by the rain. Then Theo's voice broke the silence. It was small but fierce, like he was trying super hard to be brave. "Mommy said you were dead." Q-Min went very, very still. Even his breathing seemed to stop. Jordan closed her eyes tight. This was the moment she'd been dreading for years. "Did she?" Q-Min asked softly, trying to keep his voice gentle for the boy's sake. "She said our father died before we were born." Theo's little jaw got tight again. His eyes, so much like his father's, narrowed. "She lied to us." "Theo," Jordan started to explain. "Why did she lie?" the little boy demanded. "Why did you tell us he was dead if he's not dead?" Nobody answered him. The question just hung there in the warm car, between the adults who both knew there was no simple answer. No answer that wouldn't lead to more questions. No explanation that a 4-year-old could really understand. Why did she lie? To understand that, we need to go back in time. 5 years back. To a fancy restaurant called Crescent Bay Oyster Bar, to a double shift that seemed like any other night, and to the moment Jordan Caldwell made the biggest mistake of her life, being kind to the wrong man. Jordan's feet were killing her. 11 hours of walking back and forth across the fancy tile floors of Crescent Bay Oyster Bar had turned her legs into sticks of pain. She balanced a tray of oysters on her left palm and smiled at the customers at table 12. They didn't smile back. That was normal at this place. Crescent Bay wasn't just any restaurant, it was where rich people in suits came to talk about important things while eating tiny portions of expensive food. The kind of place where you could spot politicians, lawyers, and business people all pretending not to recognize each other. "Here we are," she said, placing down their orders. "Can I get you anything else?" The man barely looked up from his phone. "No." Jordan nodded and walked away. Her smile dropped the second her back was turned. Only an hour and 15 minutes left in her double shift. She could make it. In her apron pocket, she had flashcards with anatomy terms scribbled on them. Between serving tables, she'd pull them out and try to memorize stuff about bones and muscles for her test next week. It wasn't easy studying this way, but she didn't have a choice. Jordan had $47,000 in student loans already, and she wasn't even in medical school yet. Since her mom died 2 years ago, there was nobody to help her. No safety net. No backup plan. "Excuse me, miss?" Jordan turned around. The woman at table 9 was waving her over with that look on her face. The one that meant trouble. "Yes, ma'am. This fish is overcooked." The woman pushed her half-eaten plate toward Jordan. It wasn't overcooked. Jordan knew that. The chef knew that. But the customer was always right, especially at Crescent Bay. "I'm so sorry. I'll take this back right away and have the kitchen make you a new one." "I don't want a new one. I want to speak to your manager." Of course she did. 10 minutes later, Jordan stood in the back hallway while her manager, Michael, explained customer service to her like she was 5 years old. "Just apologize and offer her dessert on the house," he said. "We can't afford complaints from people like her." By people like her, He meant rich people who knew other rich people who might not come eat here if they heard bad things. Jordan nodded and swallowed down what she really wanted to say. She needed this job too much to mess it up. At 11:15 p.m., the hostess seated someone new in Jordan's section. Table 8, she told Jordan. Just one guy. The other servers wouldn't go near table 8. It was in the corner, half hidden by a big plant. Not great for tips. But Jordan didn't mind. One person was easier than a whole table. She grabbed a water and a menu and headed over. The man sitting there was different from most of their customers. Younger, maybe late 20s. Korean. He wore a dark suit but no tie. His hair was perfect, like he'd just had it cut that morning. But what really stood out was how still he was. Not fidgeting with his phone or looking around like most people who eat alone. Just sitting there, watching the room. "Good evening," Jordan said. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" He looked up at her. His eyes were dark. Not cold, exactly, but careful. Like he was measuring everything he saw. "Water," he said. "And whatever the chef recommends." His voice was quiet. Smooth. Just a hint of an accent. "Of course." She turned to leave. "You're pre-med." Jordan stopped. Turned back. "Excuse me?" He nodded toward her hands. "The way you carry the tray. You keep your wrists straight, protect your fingers. Either you play an instrument, or you need your hands for something precise." He tilted his head slightly. "And there are flashcards in your pocket." "Anatomy, from what I can see." Jordan's hand went to her apron pocket. One of her cards was sticking out a little. "That's pretty observant." "It's a habit." Noticing things about strangers is a habit? Sometimes it's important to notice things. She didn't ask what he meant by that. Something told her not to. By 1:30 a.m., Jordan was finally done. She counted her tips in the back room. $127 for the whole shift. Not terrible, but not great either. Definitely not enough to cover both her electric bill and her phone bill, which meant she'd have to decide which one could wait another week. She said goodnight to the last few workers and walked out to the staff parking lot. Her car sat at the far end, a beat-up 2009 Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door and 180,000 miles on it. But it was hers, and it got her to work and school. Usually. She put the key in and turned it. The engine made a sad clicking noise. "Come on," she mumbled, trying again. Nothing. Third try. Still nothing. Jordan leaned forward until her forehead was resting on the steering wheel. She was so tired. Too tired for this. A tap on her window made her jump. It was him. The guy from table 8. Standing there in his perfect suit, looking at her through the glass. She rolled down her window halfway. Not all the way. She wasn't stupid. "Car trouble?" he asked. "It's fine. Just being stubborn. It's almost 2 a.m. Not many people around to help." Jordan didn't say anything to that. She didn't need to be reminded how vulnerable she was, alone in a dark parking lot. "My driver can give you a ride," he said. "Or I can call someone to look at your car. Your choice." She looked past him. There was indeed a black Escalade idling nearby with a driver inside. "I don't even know your name," she said. Cumin Ma. Jordan Caldwell." "Nice to meet you, Jordan." "So what'll it be?" She studied his face. He wasn't pushing. Wasn't standing too close. Wasn't giving off any creepy vibes. But still. "If your driver could drop me at the Foggy Bottom metro station, that would help. I don't need a ride all the way home." "Smart girl," his eyes seemed to say. Of course. In the car, they talked about nothing important. The traffic in D.C. The restaurant. The fact that she was studying for a big test. But underneath it all was something else. Something unsaid. The way he sat, slightly turned toward her but keeping a respectful distance. The way he asked questions but didn't pry when she gave short answers. Jordan noticed things too. Like how he paid the bill with cash. No credit card. Like how his phone stayed face down the whole time. Like how his driver never once called him by name. "So what do you do, exactly?" she finally asked. Cumin's mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. "I manage family affairs." "That's pretty vague." "It's complicated." "Try me." "Another time, maybe." Not a lie, exactly. But definitely not the truth. When they reached the metro station at 2:15 a.m., she thanked him and reached for the door handle. "Your car," he said. "I'll have someone look at it. It'll be in the staff lot tomorrow, running." She turned back. "What?" "It's a simple fix. Probably the starter." "I can't let you do that. I don't even know you. You don't have to know me for me to do something helpful." "Why would you help me?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because you look like you're carrying enough weight already." Jordan didn't know what to say to that. Nobody talked to her that way. Nobody seemed to notice how hard everything was. "Thank you," she finally said, and got out of the car. He didn't ask for her number. Didn't try to set up another meeting. Didn't expect anything. She watched the black Escalade pull away and disappear into the night. Here's what Jordan couldn't have known about Cumin that night. He'd been watching her for 2 weeks. Not in a creepy, stalker way. Not following her around or anything weird like that. But he ate at Crescent Bay a lot. It was a good place for certain business meetings because nobody asked questions. And during those 2 weeks, he'd noticed her. The way she moved through the restaurant like she was on a mission. The way she handled rude customers without losing her cool. The way she pulled out those flashcards whenever she had 10 seconds to spare, like she was racing against time. He wasn't looking for a girlfriend. He wasn't looking for anything, really. But there was something about how calm she stayed in the middle of all that stress and pressure. Something familiar. He recognized her. Not her face. Her fight. The fight of someone who keeps going when everything is telling them to quit. And that recognition, that moment of seeing himself in her determination, would be the beginning of everything that happened next. A week after Cumin fixed her car, Jordan saw him again at the restaurant. Same corner table. Same quiet demeanor. Same order, water and whatever the chef recommended. When she brought his check at the end of the meal, there was a note underneath it written in neat handwriting. "The car runs. You're welcome." Jordan waited until he'd paid before saying anything. "So it was you who fixed my car?" "Yes. I didn't ask you to do that." "I know. And I can't pay you back." "I know that too." She crossed her arms. "So why?" Cumin looked up at her, his dark eyes calm. "Because some things shouldn't have to be earned." Jordan didn't know what to do with that answer. No one did things for free. There was always a catch, always something they wanted in return. But he just paid his bill in cash, again, nodded politely, and left. By the 3rd week, a pattern started. Cumin would show up at the restaurant a couple times a week. Then one night, he was waiting outside when her shift ended. "I thought you might want company on your walk to the car," he said. Jordan hesitated, then nodded. They ended up walking along the Georgetown waterfront instead of going straight to the parking lot. The night was cool but not cold. The water reflected the city lights. They talked about small stuff. The weather. A movie that had just come out. When she mentioned her upcoming exam, he asked questions that showed he'd actually been listening before. During these walks, Jordan found herself telling him things. About how her mom had died from cancer 2 years ago. About how she was trying to become a doctor even though everyone said it was too expensive, too hard. Cumin didn't talk much about himself. But he listened. Really listened in a way most people didn't. By their 3rd walk, he brought her coffee exactly how she liked it, 1 sugar, lots of cream. By the 5th walk, he asked if her Thursday study group went well, remembering her schedule without her having to remind him. By the 7th walk, he remembered the name of the professor she hated, the one who marked her papers unfairly. It wasn't big romantic gestures that made Jordan start looking forward to seeing him. It was these small things. The paying attention. The remembering. The showing up when he said he would. In a world where most people forgot her as soon as she was out of sight, Cumin's consistency felt important. About 5 weeks after they first met, they were walking near the Kennedy Center when two men approached them. They were both Asian, wearing dark suits despite the late hour. "Mr. Ma," one of them said, "we need to speak with you." The change in Cumin was instant. His whole body went stiff. The small smile he'd been wearing disappeared. Even his voice sounded different when he responded, harder, colder. He spoke to them in Korean, fast, clipped words that sounded like orders. The men kept glancing at Jordan, then looking away when they caught her watching them. After a minute, they nodded and left quickly. Jordan felt something cold settle in her stomach. Who were they? She asked when they were alone again. Associates. What kind of associates? The kind I'd rather not discuss. Jordan knew she should push harder. Should demand real answers. The way those men had looked at Cumin, like they were afraid of him, wasn't normal. Nothing about this was normal. But she didn't ask. And that was the moment that mattered. If Jordan had pushed for answers right then, if she demanded to know exactly who Cumin was and what he did, everything might have turned out different. But she was 24, always tired from double shifts, still missing her mom, and standing next to the first person in years who made her feel like maybe she wasn't totally alone in the world. Red flags only look red when you want to see them. And Jordan didn't want to see. A week later, they were walking along a quiet street after her late shift. The sidewalk was cracked and uneven. Jordan, tired from being on her feet all day, didn't see the raised edge of concrete. She tripped. Cumin caught her arm before she could fall. His grip was strong but not tight. He steadied her easily, like it was nothing. For a moment, they just stood there. His hand on her upper arm. Her palm pressed against his chest where she'd reached out to catch herself. She could feel his heart beating under her hand. "Careful," he said quietly. "Yeah. Careful." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. She stepped back. He let go immediately. Didn't try to hold on. Didn't use the moment to pull her closer. Didn't make it weird. They kept walking, a little more space between them than before. By week 8, Jordan had a decision to make. Whatever was happening between them was becoming something real. Something that mattered. But there was still this wall, this big question about who Cumin really was. They were sitting on what had become their bench at the waterfront. It was almost midnight. Not many people around. "What do you actually do?" she finally asked. "For real this time. What do you think I do?" "I think you're not just a businessman." He was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the water instead of at her. "No," he finally said. "I'm not." "Are you going to tell me?" "If you want to know, I'll tell you." He turned to face her. "But if I do, you can't unknow it. And some things are easier not to know." Jordan knew she should walk away. She knew that. Some part of her was screaming to get up, go to her car, and never see Cumin Ma again. But when he looked at her there in the dark, she saw something she hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Fear, even. Like he was afraid of what she'd think once she knew the truth. He wasn't trying to trick her. Wasn't playing some game. He was giving her a real choice. Telling her there was a line, and once she crossed it, there was no going back. And that honesty, more than anything else, was what made her stay. "Tell me," she said. So he told her. About his family. About the organization. About what he really did for a living. And nothing was ever the same after that. Jordan and Cumin sat on their waterfront bench long after he finished telling her everything. The water was black now, reflecting city lights like scattered stars. It was getting colder, but Jordan didn't move. She couldn't. Cumin had just explained his whole world to her. The Ma organization. Started by his grandfather who came from Seoul in the 1970s. Built by his father throughout the 80s and 90s. Now run by him since his father died 3 years ago. On paper, they were an import-export business. Bringing in electronics, specialty foods, furniture. But that was just the cover. The real business was moving money. Hiding money. Making things happen that shouldn't happen. Knowing things about powerful people. Using that knowledge when needed. Controlling pieces of the city that most folks never even thought about. He didn't use words like mafia or gang or crime family. He didn't try to make it sound exciting or cool like in movies. He just explained it like it was a job. A complicated, dangerous job that he was born into. Most days, I'm just solving problems, he said, looking at the water instead of at her. Someone needs something moved without questions. Someone else needs protection. A business owner needs help with competition. I make connections. I arrange things. Do you hurt people? Jordan finally asked. Her voice sounded small in the night air. Q-Min was quiet for a moment. Not personally. Not if there's any other option. But yes, sometimes people get hurt. I try to keep that part of the business minimal. My father was less careful about that. Jordan wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite her jacket. So when those men came up to you last week, they work for me. There was a problem with a shipment. Nothing violent, he added quickly. Just something that needed immediate attention. And the restaurant? Is that why you go there? For business meetings? He nodded. It's neutral ground. No connections to my family. No one watching. The reality of his life started to sink in for Jordan. The cash payments. The careful way he always scanned rooms. The driver who never used his name. The phone that stayed face down. It wasn't just caution. It was survival. You never know who's watching, Q-Min said softly, like he could read her thoughts. There's always someone. Rival organizations. Law enforcement. Even people inside my own group who think they should be in charge instead of me. It sounds exhausting. It is. They sat in silence for another minute. A boat passed on the water, lights blinking in the distance. Why are you telling me all this? Jordan finally asked. You barely know me. I know enough, he said. And I'm telling you because if I don't, and this, whatever is happening between us, if it goes further, you'll find out eventually. And you'll feel lied to. I don't want to lie to you. So what happens now? That's up to you. Q-Min turned to face her fully. I understand if you want to walk away. Most people would. Probably should. Jordan looked at him, really looked. At his calm eyes. His careful hands. The weight he carried in his shoulders. I need to think about it, she said. He nodded. Take all the time you need. Jordan didn't see Q-Min for a week after that night. She worked her shifts. She went to class. She studied for exams. She did laundry in the basement of her apartment building at 2 a.m. because that's when the machines were free. Normal life. Except nothing felt normal anymore. On her break at the restaurant, she pulled out a notebook and did what she always did when facing a hard decision. She made a list. On one side of the page, she wrote reasons to walk away. He's involved in illegal stuff. Being with him could be dangerous. My plans require stability and safety. Med school is hard enough without complications. What if I get caught up in something? What if he gets arrested? On the other side, she wrote reasons to stay. He's honest when he could have lied. He's never pressured me about anything. He remembers everything I tell him. I feel safe with him, is that crazy? He respects my goals. I think about him all the time. I might be falling in love with him. She stared at the page for a long time. The logical choice was obvious. The safe choice. The smart choice. But since when was love ever logical? And Jordan, Practical, organized, careful Jordan, who planned everything and took calculated risks, was already in too deep to make the smart choice. She folded the paper and put it in her pocket. She already knew what she was going to do. The next time Kyu-min came to the restaurant, Jordan was ready. She took her break when he was finishing his meal and sat down across from him. "Hi," she said. "Hi." His face gave nothing away, but his eyes were watching her carefully. "I've been thinking. And I'm still here." Something in his expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but something close to it. Something like relief. "Are you sure?" "No," she said honestly. "But I'm going to take the risk anyway." Over the next 6 weeks, their relationship deepened in ways Jordan hadn't expected. Since they couldn't be seen together too often at places where Kyu-min was known, they found secret spots. Small restaurants in neighborhoods where nobody would recognize him. Late-night walks in parts of the city that felt like they belonged just to them. They talked about everything except his work. About books they'd read. Movies they'd seen. Places they wanted to visit someday. Jordan told him about growing up in Southeast D.C., about her mom working 2 jobs to help her get through college, about the moment she decided to become a doctor after her grandmother died because the hospital didn't have enough staff. Kyu-min didn't share as much at first, but slowly, pieces of him emerged. He told her about growing up between 2 worlds, Korea and America. About the pressure of being an only son. About the expectations that had been placed on him since before he could talk. "Did you ever want to do something else?" Jordan asked one night as they sat on her tiny balcony, sharing takeout. "Architecture," he said after a long pause. "I used to draw buildings when I was a kid. My mother saved all the drawings." "Why didn't you pursue it?" "It wasn't an option. The family business, it's not something you choose. It chooses you." There were other sides to Kyu-min that surprised Jordan. He ran a legitimate foundation that funded after-school programs in poor neighborhoods. He made anonymous donations to hospitals. He had a whole life that operated in the daylight, separate from the shadows. Slowly, he started to enter her world too. He'd come to her tiny apartment, sit on her worn-out couch, and help her study for exams. He never complained about the thin walls or the noisy neighbors or the fact that her air conditioning barely worked. He just seemed happy to be there, in her space. One night, he noticed the photo on her nightstand. "Your mother?" he asked, looking at the smiling woman with Jordan's same eyes. "Yeah. That was about 6 months before she got sick." He studied the photo carefully. "You look like her. Same smile." "She would have liked you," Jordan said, surprising herself with the words. "Even knowing what I do?" She believed in seeing the person, not the circumstances. And she was a good judge of character. About 3 months into their relationship, they had their first real fight. Jordan had just received her acceptance letter to Georgetown School of Medicine. She was thrilled but also panicking about the cost. Even with scholarships, she was looking at another $200,000 in loans. "I could help," Kyu-min said as they celebrated at her apartment with cheap champagne. "Pay for it. All of it." Jordan put down her glass. "No. Why not? It would be nothing to me." "It would be everything to me," she said. "I don't want to owe you." "It wouldn't be a debt, Jordan. It would be a gift. Everything is a debt. Everything has strings. Not with me. Not with us." Jordan shook her head. "You don't understand. I've worked for everything I have. Every single thing. I've never taken handouts. It's not a handout if it's from someone who loves you." They both froze at the words. He hadn't said that before. Neither of them had. "Prove it," she finally said. "Prove there are no strings." "How?" "By respecting that I need to do this my way." Kyu-min was quiet for a long time. She could see him struggling with it, the desire to help, to fix, to provide butting up against her need for independence. "Okay," he finally said. "Your way." They did reach a compromise. He wouldn't pay her tuition, but he helped with smaller things. Car maintenance so she wouldn't have to worry about breaking down. Textbooks that would have eaten up a month's tips. Groceries sometimes, when things were tight. Small enough that Jordan could accept. Big enough that it made a difference. 4.5 months after they met, just over 18 weeks, Kyu-min took Jordan to their waterfront spot late at night. The same bench where he'd told her the truth about himself. They walked in comfortable silence, his hand occasionally brushing against hers. The August air was thick with humidity, but a light breeze came off the water. Kyu-min stopped walking. Turned to face her. "I want to marry you." Not a question. A simple statement. Jordan's heart stuttered. "What?" "I want to marry you," he repeated. "But there are complications." Of course there were. There always would be. "It would have to be secret," he continued. "For your protection. In my world, people I care about become targets. If other organizations don't know about you, they can't use you to get to me. If you're not officially connected to me, you stay safer." Jordan tried to process what he was saying. A secret marriage. No announcements. No party with friends. No ring she could wear in public. It sounded like shame. Like being hidden away. But when she looked at his face, she saw something else entirely. Fear. He wasn't ashamed of her. He was terrified of losing her. Terrified his world would destroy something good. This wasn't about hiding her, it was about protecting her. "Ask me properly," she said softly. Kyu-min's eyes widened slightly. Then, to her surprise, he knelt down on one knee right there on the concrete path. "Jordan Caldwell, will you marry me?" "Yes." 2 weeks later, they stood in a small courthouse downtown. Just the two of them. A judge who apparently owed Kyu-min a favor performed the ceremony. No one else was present. No family. No friends. No witnesses except the court clerk who seemed bored by the whole thing. Jordan wore a simple blue dress, her mother's favorite color. Kyu-min wore a suit that probably cost more than her rent. They didn't exchange rings, too visible, too obvious, too much of a connection that could be traced. The ceremony took less than 10 minutes. Name, vows, signature, done. Married. In the car afterward, Kyu-min reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I know we said no rings," he said. "But I wanted you to have something." Inside was a necklace. A small jade pendant hanging from a delicate gold chain. Simple enough that it wouldn't draw attention but beautiful in its craftsmanship. "It was my grandmother's," he said as he fastened it around her neck. "She gave it to me before she died. Said it should go to the woman who would carry our family's future." Jordan touched the smooth stone. "It's beautiful." "This is yours now," he said, his fingers lingering on the chain. "Whenever you doubt what we are, what this is, look at this. Remember." She kissed him then, in the back of the car, his driver tactfully keeping his eyes on the road ahead. Mrs. Ma. Secretly, but truly. For 8 months, they lived in a careful balance. Jordan kept working at the restaurant, partly as cover for their relationship, partly because she still needed the money even with Kyu-min's help. She kept applying to medical schools, eventually accepting Georgetown's offer. She kept her tiny apartment, though Kyu-min stayed there more and more often. They were careful. Disciplined. They had rules about how often they could be seen together in public, about who could know what. They took separate cars to places, arrived at different times, left separately. But in private, in the safety of her apartment with the curtains drawn, they were just Jordan and Kyu-min. Just a man and woman building something together in stolen moments of normalcy. She learned that he liked old movies. That he couldn't cook anything more complicated than eggs. That he had nightmares sometimes that made him wake up sweating and shaking. He learned that she sang in the shower. That she couldn't sleep if any closet doors were open. That she cried every year on her mother's birthday. Small things. Important things. And then, on a random Tuesday in October, Jordan was going through her planner and realized something. She flipped back through the pages, counting days, checking dates. 3 weeks late. She was never late. The next morning, she bought a pregnancy test on her way to class. Took it in the campus bathroom with shaking hands. 2 lines. Positive. The careful balance they'd built was about to crack wide open. Jordan stared at the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test for a long time. She took 3 more tests just to be sure. All positive. She was definitely pregnant. She sat on the edge of her bathtub, the tests lined up on the sink counter, and tried to figure out how she felt. Happy? Scared? Both? Her hand went to her stomach automatically. There was a baby in there. Her baby. Cumin's baby. They'd been so careful. Well, mostly careful. There was that one night after her big exam when they'd celebrated a little too much with wine. Maybe that was when it happened. Jordan needed to tell him. They'd been married for 2 months now, secretly, but still legally married. This wasn't some accidental pregnancy with a random boyfriend. This was her husband's child. But still, she was nervous. This wasn't part of the plan. Med school was about to start. Their relationship was still a secret. His life was complicated and dangerous. A baby changed everything. That night when Cumin came over after work, Jordan had dinner waiting. Nothing fancy, just pasta with the sauce he liked. She couldn't focus on eating, though. Her fork just pushed food around her plate. Everything okay? Cumin asked. You're quiet tonight. I have some news, she said, putting down her fork. Big news. He waited, watching her face with those calm, patient eyes. I'm pregnant. For a moment, Cumin didn't move. Didn't speak. His face went completely still in that way it did when he was processing something unexpected. You're sure? He finally asked. For positive tests. So yeah, pretty sure. Then something happened that Jordan hadn't expected. Cumin smiled. A real smile, not the small, careful one he usually wore, but a full, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. A baby, he said softly. Our baby. He came around the table and pulled her up into his arms, holding her tight but carefully, like she might break. You're happy? She asked against his chest. Of course I'm happy. He pulled back to look at her. Aren't you? I don't know what I am. Happy, yes. But also scared. This changes everything, Cumin. The smile faded slightly. Reality setting in. We need to be more careful, he said, his mind already moving to protection mode. More protected. If anyone finds out. Who would find out? Nobody even knows we're married. There are people who watch me, Jordan. Always. If they learn about you, about this baby. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Jordan knew what he meant. In his world, family was leverage. And leverage could be used to hurt you. What do we do? She asked. We make plans, Cumin said, his voice going into the calm, steady tone he used when solving problems. I have a house outside the city. Secure. Private. You can move there after the first trimester. We'll get you private doctors, ones who don't ask questions. What about med school? You can defer a year. Or we can find a program somewhere else, somewhere nobody knows me. Jordan stepped back. You want me to just give up everything? My plans, my life here? I want you safe, he said. Both of you. There was fear in his eyes. Real fear. Jordan had never seen him afraid before, and it scared her more than anything he'd said. Across town in a large house in Potomac, Maryland, Madame Yunji Ma was reviewing financial reports when her assistant announced a visitor. Dae-young Park entered the room and bowed slightly. He was Cumin's second-in-command, had been for 3 years. Loyal to the organization above all. Which sometimes meant loyal to the mother over the son. You have information? Madame Ma asked without looking up from her papers. Yes, ma'am. About your son. Now she looked up. Dae-young placed a folder on her desk. Inside were photographs. Kyu-min entering a small apartment building in Foggy Bottom. Multiple nights, different times. Always alone. Always staying for hours. He's been seeing someone, Dae-young said. Who? Dae-young hesitated. A waitress from Crescent Bay. Black. American. They appear to be serious. Madame Ma's face revealed nothing, but her fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the desk. How serious? I've had someone watching her too. She visited the courthouse 2 months ago. With your son. Madame Ma closed the folder. You believe they're married? It seems likely. Does anyone else know? No. They've been extremely careful. I only found out because I've been watching him personally. Madame Ma nodded slowly. 3 generations of business relationships. Korean partners. Traditional families. Networks that expected a certain kind of heir with a certain kind of wife. A black American waitress was not part of that plan. Continue watching them, she said. I want to know everything. Where she goes. Who she speaks to. Everything. Yes, ma'am. And Dae-young? My son doesn't need to know about our conversation. Of course, ma'am. After he left, Madame Ma walked to the window and looked out at her carefully maintained garden. So much work had gone into building this family. So many sacrifices. So many difficult decisions. She hadn't spent 30 years protecting the Ma legacy to watch her son throw it all away over a girl. In the weeks that followed, Jordan and Kyu-min tried to make plans. But the more they talked, the more complicated everything seemed to get. I don't understand why I can't just move into your place, Jordan said one night as they lay in her bed. You have security there already. Because too many people know where I live. It's the first place anyone would look. But nobody knows about us. Not yet. But if someone found out and wanted to hurt me, they'd go straight for my home. Jordan rolled onto her side to face him. You keep talking like it's just a matter of time before someone tries to hurt us. Is that really how you live? Always waiting for the attack? Yes, he said simply. That's exactly how I live. The reality of his world was becoming clearer to Jordan every day. The constant looking over his shoulder. The careful planning of every move. The assumption that danger was always just around the corner. It was exhausting. And now there was a baby to think about. Maybe we should just leave, she suggested. Go somewhere new. Start over. You don't understand. There is no out for someone like me. I can't just walk away. The organization, the connections, the obligations, they follow you. Your uncle walked away. Kyu-min stiffened. Who told you about my uncle? You did. Months ago. You mentioned he left the family business. That was different. The circumstances were different. How? He wasn't in charge. I am. If I tried to leave now, it would create a power vacuum. People would get hurt fighting to fill it. And my mother. He stopped abruptly. Your mother what? She wouldn't understand. She's traditional. Family comes first. Always. Jordan put her hand on her stomach. This is family too. I know. Kyu-min covered her hand with his. And I'll protect you both. I promise. But even as he said it, Jordan could see the worry in his eyes. The fear that maybe this was a promise he couldn't keep. 2 weeks later, Jordan had a doctor's appointment that confirmed what the home tests already told her. She was about 10 weeks pregnant. The doctor did an ultrasound, and Jordan got to see the tiny blob that would become their child. Everything looks healthy, the doctor said. Due date is around mid-May. Jordan clutched the ultrasound pictures tightly on her way home. Kyu-min couldn't come to the appointment, too risky to be seen together at a doctor's office, but she couldn't wait to show him. As she walked into the lobby of her apartment building, she noticed a well-dressed older Asian woman checking the mailboxes. Something about the woman made Jordan pause. She was too elegant for this rundown building. The woman turned and smiled at Jordan. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm looking for apartment 3B. My friend's daughter just moved in, and I wanted to welcome her." 3B is down the hall on the right, Jordan said, pointing. "But I think that apartment is empty right now. At least, I haven't seen anyone move in." "Oh, I must have the wrong building. Thank you anyway." The woman walked past Jordan and out the door. Something about her seemed familiar, but Jordan couldn't place it. She shrugged it off and headed up to her own apartment, excited to call Q-Min about the ultrasound. What Jordan couldn't know, was that the woman was Madame Ma. And she hadn't made a mistake about the building. She was exactly where she meant to be, seeing exactly who she meant to see. A few days later, Jordan was working her shift at the restaurant when the hostess seated someone in her section. "Table 4, she said. "Just one lady." Jordan grabbed a menu and water and headed over. Then stopped in her tracks. It was the woman from her building. The one looking for 3B. She sat with perfect posture, dressed in an expensive suit, looking completely at home in the upscale restaurant. "Good evening," Jordan said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Can I get you something to drink?" The woman smiled. The same smile from the lobby. "Just water is fine." Throughout the meal, the woman made small talk. Asked Jordan how long she'd worked at the restaurant. Commented on how busy it must be. Nothing unusual, except for the intense way she watched Jordan's every move. When Jordan brought the check, the woman said, "You work very hard. That's admirable." "Thank you. My son works hard too. He has responsibilities. Family expectations. I'm sure you understand." Jordan's blood ran cold. "I'm not sure I do." The woman's smile never wavered. "You will." After she left, Jordan checked the credit card receipt. The name on it was Yunji Ma. Q-Min's mother had found her. That night, Jordan tried calling Q-Min, but he didn't answer. He was in Seoul on business, his first international trip since they'd found out about the baby. He'd be gone for 2 weeks. She left a message, "Your mother came to the restaurant today. She knows about me. Call me as soon as you get this." But he didn't call back. Maybe he was in meetings. Maybe the time difference made it difficult. Maybe his phone didn't work overseas. Or maybe someone was making sure her messages didn't reach him. 3 days later, November 15th, Jordan was making tea in her apartment kitchen. Almost 11 p.m. She was tired but couldn't sleep. Pregnancy made her restless, and she was worried about Q-Min. He still hadn't returned her calls. She heard a sound at the door. Not a knock. A clicking noise. Like someone picking the lock. Her heart started pounding. She grabbed her phone off the counter and moved toward the bedroom. Q-Min had installed a reinforced closet door after they got married, a safe room of sorts. If she could get in there, she'd be okay. She was halfway across the living room when the door swung open. 3 men entered. All wearing dark clothes. Faces covered with ski masks. Professional. Silent. Jordan turned to run for the bedroom, but one of them caught her arm. Spun her around. "Mrs. Ma," the man said. His voice was calm. Almost polite. "We need you to listen very carefully." Another man pressed something against her stomach. Cold metal. A knife. "Your husband has enemies," the first man continued. "That's not surprising. But what might surprise you is that some of those enemies are very close to him. Close enough to know about you. Close enough to know about this." The knife pressed slightly harder against her belly. Not cutting, just threatening. "You're going to leave. Tonight. You're going to disappear. And if you ever contact Q-Min Ma again, if you ever let him find you, we will finish what we started here. Do you understand?" Jordan couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. "Who sent you?" she finally managed to whisper. The man smiled behind his mask. She couldn't see it, but she could hear it in his voice. Someone who loves him very much. More than you ever could. They left her with a plane ticket to Chicago. $10,000 in cash. A burner phone. And a warning. We'll know if you talk. We'll know if you stay. We'll know if you try to be clever. After they left, Jordan sat on the floor of her apartment, shaking uncontrollably. The knife hadn't cut her, but she felt wounded all the same. She looked at her phone. Kyu-min's number. She could call him. Tell him everything. He'd come back. He'd protect her. But these men knew where she lived. Knew she was pregnant. Knew when Kyu-min was traveling. They were inside his world. And if they could get to her once, they could get to her again. Jordan placed her hand on her stomach. The tiny life growing inside her. So small. So vulnerable. She made the hardest decision of her life. She would run. Jordan left D.C. that same night. She didn't even go back to her apartment. Whatever was there, clothes, books, photos, it was all just stuff. Not worth dying for. Not worth her baby dying for. She took the plane ticket they gave her and flew to Chicago with nothing but her purse, the clothes on her back, and $10,000 cash stuffed into her bra and shoes. She sat stiff in the middle seat, hands protectively over her stomach, jumping every time someone walked down the aisle. The plane landed at O'Hare at 6 a.m. It was snowing. Jordan had no coat. No plan. Just a desperate need to disappear. In the airport bathroom, she counted the money again. $10,000 seemed like a lot until you had no job, no home, and a baby coming. She needed to make it last. She found a cheap motel near the airport. Paid cash for a week. Gave a fake name. The man at the desk didn't even look at her ID. That first week, Jordan barely left the room. She ordered delivery food and paid in cash with big tips so they wouldn't remember her face. She watched the parking lot from behind the curtains, sure that any minute those men would show up again. She cried a lot. For herself. For her baby. For Kyu-min, who probably thought she'd just left him. But crying didn't solve anything. She needed a plan. Jordan made a list of rules. Cash only. No cards. No accounts. Nothing with her name. Move often. Never stay in one place more than a few weeks. Change appearance regularly. Avoid cameras. Trust no one. Rule number 5 was the hardest. Jordan had always been independent, but she'd never been completely alone before. Now she had no one. No friends. No family. Not even acquaintances. Just her and the baby. After a week at the motel, she found a women's shelter downtown. They didn't ask many questions. Lots of women showed up there running from something. Jordan was just one more. She told them her name was Taylor Williams. That her boyfriend beat her when he found out she was pregnant. That she had no family to help. The shelter had resources. A doctor who came once a week to check on the pregnant women. Job listings for places that paid cash. Tips on cheap places to live. Jordan took it all in. She learned fast. For the next few months, she bounced between shelters. She cut off her long hair and dyed what was left blonde. She wore baggy clothes to hide her growing belly. She took jobs washing dishes at restaurants where the managers didn't care about paperwork. At night, alone on shelter cots, she'd hold her stomach and whisper to her baby. Tell it stories about its dad. The good parts. The kind man who brought her coffee just how she liked it. Who fixed her car without being asked. Who wanted to protect them both. She never said his name out loud. Never mentioned the Ma organization. Never talked about what really happened. Those parts of the story lived only in her head. As her belly grew, moving around got harder. By her 7th month, she was huge. Bigger than she should have been. Twins, the shelter doctor told her after an exam. You're having twins. Jordan stared at him. What? 2 babies. See here? He showed her a crude ultrasound. And here. 2 separate heartbeats. 2 babies. Twice the responsibility. Twice the danger. Twice the reason to stay hidden. By then, Jordan had moved to Detroit. Chicago felt too big, too exposed. She found a room to rent from an old woman who didn't ask for ID, just cash up front. The twins came early. 7.5 months. Jordan went into labor on a Tuesday morning while walking to the corner store. She made it to a free clinic 6 blocks away, barely able to walk through the contractions. They wanted to transfer her to a hospital. She refused, panicking at the thought of giving her real name, showing ID, being in a system where they might find her. No hospital, she kept saying through the pain. No hospital. The delivery was difficult. The first baby, a boy, came out quickly. But the second baby, a girl, was positioned wrong. Breech birth. Dangerous. Jordan lost consciousness somewhere during that part. Lost too much blood. When she woke up, she was in a hospital anyway. You almost died, a nurse told her. We had no choice but to transfer you. Jordan tried to sit up, panicked. My babies? They're fine. Small, but healthy. What's your name, honey? We need it for the birth certificates. Jordan gave them a fake name. Taylor Williams. She named her son Theodore, her daughter Nari. She used a fake father's name. Made up a story about him dying in a car accident. The hospital staff were kind. They didn't push too hard when her answers seemed vague. They'd seen all kinds of situations. The social worker was trickier. She asked more questions. Wanted to help Jordan get benefits, housing assistance, things that required real ID. Jordan dodged as best she could. As soon as the doctors said the babies were strong enough to leave, Jordan checked out. Against medical advice. She still had about $8,000 left. Enough to rent a cheap apartment for a few months. The twins were tiny. Theo was 5 pounds. Nari just 4. They cried all the time. Needed to eat every 2 hours. Jordan barely slept. But they were hers. And they were safe. That's what mattered. The first 2 years were the hardest. Moving with 2 babies was complicated. Everything took longer. Cost more. Jordan developed a system. She'd find a cheap place to live. Take whatever job she could get that paid cash, usually cleaning houses or washing dishes. Save every penny. When she had enough saved, or when something felt off, they'd move again. Chicago to Detroit to Toledo to Cleveland to Pittsburgh to Baltimore. Always moving east. Closer to D.C. She wasn't sure why. It made no logical sense to move toward the danger. But something kept pulling her that way. Maybe it was just that D.C. was the only place that had ever felt like home. The twins grew fast. They started walking at 10 months. Talking soon after. They were smart kids. Observant. They noticed everything, just like their father. Theo was serious, even as a baby. Watchful. His eyes, so much like Cumin's, seemed to see right through people. He was protective of his sister from the start, always keeping her in sight. Nari was different. Curious about everything. Friendly. Always smiling at strangers, which terrified Jordan. She was the one who would wander off if Jordan looked away for 2 seconds. At night, Jordan would tell them stories. Made-up adventures about brave kids. Fairy tales she remembered from her own childhood. And sometimes, carefully, stories about Korea. She taught them the few Korean words she remembered from Cumin, Annyeong, for hello. Kamsahamnida, for thank you. Sarangi, for I love you. She showed them pictures from library books. Your daddy came from here, she'd say, pointing to Seoul. It's a beautiful city. Maybe you'll see it someday. Is Daddy in heaven? Theo asked when he was about 3. Jordan hesitated. Yes, baby. He's in heaven. It was easier than the truth. Safer. By the third year, something changed in Jordan. She stopped just running and started thinking longer term. It happened in Baltimore. She was cleaning houses for rich people in Roland Park. Big houses with security systems and home offices. Places where important people had important conversations. One day, she was dusting a bookshelf when she heard men talking in the next room. Business talk. She wouldn't have paid attention except one of them mentioned the MA shipment and customs clearance. Jordan froze. Listened harder. They were talking about the MA organization. About moving something through Baltimore port. About which officials were on the payroll. When they left, Jordan found papers on the desk. Shipping manifests. Financial records. She took photos with her cheap phone before putting everything back exactly how she found it. She wasn't sure why she did it. Some instinct for self-preservation, maybe. Evidence. Proof. Something to have just in case. After that, she started paying more attention. When cleaning houses, she'd look at papers left out. Listen to conversations. Take photos when she could. She bought a small recorder. Hid it in her cleaning supplies. Started collecting bits of information about the MA organization. About their operations on the East Coast. About Madame Ma specifically. She wasn't trying to destroy Cumin's family business. That was never the goal. But after 2 years of feeling powerless, of always running, always hiding, always afraid, she needed something to even the odds. If they ever found her, when they found her, she wanted options. Leverage. A way to protect her children that didn't involve running again. She started keeping the evidence in a waterproof bag. It went wherever she went. Never left her sight. Even when they had to move fast, that bag came with them. It was her insurance policy. Her protection. Her weapon. In year 4, they had a close call. Jordan was working at a small Korean restaurant in Baltimore. The owner didn't ask questions, paid cash, and let her bring the twins to sit in the back room when she couldn't find someone to watch them. One night, a man came in. Korean. Well-dressed. He sat in Jordan's section and watched her closely. "You're new here," he said when she brought his water. "Just a few months," she answered, keeping her eyes down. "Where are you from originally?" "Florida." "Interesting. You look familiar to me." Jordan's heart pounded. "I have one of those faces." Throughout his meal, he kept asking questions. Where she lived. If she had family. How she liked Baltimore. Nothing directly suspicious, but too much interest for a random customer. When she brought his check, he left a $100 tip. And a business card. "If you ever need work that pays better than this," he said, "give me a call." The card had the MA organization logo in the corner. That night, Jordan packed up their tiny apartment. They were gone within 2 hours, leaving behind furniture, toys, clothes, everything except what fit in 2 backpacks. They slept in a bus station, then caught the first bus to Philadelphia the next morning. Too close. Way too close. By year 5, Jordan was exhausted. 5 years of fake names. 5 years of cheap apartments and cheaper motels. 5 years of jobs that broke her body for barely enough money to feed 2 growing kids. 5 years of looking over her shoulder. The twins were 4 now. Smart, energetic, always hungry. They asked harder questions. Why do we move so much? Why can't we have friends? Why don't we have a daddy like other kids? Jordan ran out of good answers. They'd been in Philadelphia for 6 months, longer than they'd stayed anywhere since running. Jordan had a job cleaning offices at night. The pay was decent. The twins stayed with an elderly neighbor who didn't ask too many questions. Things were almost stable. Then the neighbor died suddenly. Heart attack. And Jordan lost both childcare and their apartment in the same week. With her savings running low and nowhere to go, she made a decision that part of her knew was stupid. She took the twins to DC. It wasn't a conscious choice to go back to the danger. It was just familiar. She knew the shelters there. Knew which neighborhoods were safer. Knew the rhythm of the city. They arrived on November 10th. 5 years and 5 days since she'd run away. Almost to the day. For the first few days, they stayed in a shelter in Anacostia. But it was crowded, noisy, and Nari caught a cold from another kid. When Nari's cough got worse, Jordan decided to find somewhere quieter for a few days. That's how they ended up at Georgetown waterfront on November 15th. Jordan had found an abandoned construction site with an awning that kept off the rain. She had $12 left. No job lined up yet. No real plan. The rain started around 6 p.m. By 10 p.m., it was a downpour. The twins were huddled under the one blanket they had, trying to stay warm. Jordan held them close, her back against the cold concrete wall, and felt a tiredness that went beyond physical. She was so tired of running. So tired of being afraid. So tired of doing this alone. Headlights swept across the waterfront. A black Escalade pulled to a stop nearby. And for the first time in 5 years, Jordan stopped running. Not by choice. Because Q-Min had found her. The Escalade's headlights cut through the rain as Q-Min stepped out into the downpour. The black car idled behind him, engine humming quietly, wipers fighting against the sheets of water. Jordan watched him approach, her arms tightening instinctively around Theo and Nari. 5 years. 5 years since she'd seen him walk toward her like this. 5 years since she'd heard his voice. 5 years since she'd run away in the middle of the night with nothing but a plane ticket, some cash, and the desperate need to protect the life growing inside her. Now here he was, his expensive suit soaking through as he crossed the distance between them. His face was thinner than she remembered. Harder. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But his gaze, that intense, focused look that seemed to see right through everything, that hadn't changed at all. Jordan, he said when he was close enough to speak without shouting over the rain. Just her name. But the way he said it, like a prayer, like a question, like a wound opening, made her throat tighten. Don't, she managed to say, pulling the twins closer. Don't come any closer. He stopped. Rain streaming down his face. His normally perfect hair plastered to his forehead. Nari whimpered against Jordan's shoulder, confused and frightened by the tension she could feel in her mother's body. But Theo was staring at Q-Min with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. His small face serious. Watchful. God, he looked like his father. Jordan, Q-Min tried again. Please. Just tell me what happened. Why did you? I didn't leave you, she said, the words coming out ragged, torn from somewhere deep inside her. Is that what you think? That I left because I wanted to? Everyone told me. Everyone lied to you. The rain filled the silence between them for a moment. Jordan could see him processing, recalculating, his mind working through what this meant. That brilliant, careful mind that had always seen connections others missed. Come with me, he said finally, his voice dropping into that calm, controlled tone she remembered. The one he used when he needed someone to trust him. Just get in the car. Get warm. We don't have to talk about anything else tonight. Jordan shook her head. Water from her soaked hair ran down her neck, under her thin jacket. You don't understand. If I go with you, you'll be safe. Safe? She couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped. Do you even know what that word means anymore? Theo tugged on her jacket sleeve. His small fingers were stiff with cold, his lips starting to take on a bluish tinge. Mommy, he said quietly. I'm really cold. Something in Jordan's chest cracked open. Her babies were freezing. Hungry. Exhausted. They'd been through so much because of her choices, necessary choices, but choices that had cost them a normal childhood. And now here was their father, offering a warm car, offering help. She looked at Theo's tired face. At Nari, still crying softly against her shoulder. At Q-Min standing in the rain, water running down his face like tears. 5 years of running. 5 years of never staying anywhere long enough to make friends. 5 years of minimum wage jobs and counting pennies and explaining to her children why they couldn't have what other kids had. She was so tired. Okay, she said, the word coming out like surrender. But I'm not promising anything. This doesn't fix everything. I'm not asking for promises, he said. I'm not expecting anything. He moved slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal. He shrugged off his wet jacket and held it out to Theo. Here, he said softly. Theo looked up at Jordan, waiting for her permission. She nodded slightly. The boy reached out and took the jacket. It swallowed his small frame completely, but at least it was something dry. Then Nari, brave, curious Nari who had never met a stranger she didn't want to talk to, did something unexpected. She lifted her small arms toward Q-Min, clearly wanting to be picked up. Jordan felt her heart squeeze. Nari had always been the trusting one. Too trusting, sometimes. But there was something else here. Some recognition, maybe. Some instinct that told her this man was safe. Q-Min hesitated for just a moment before gently lifting the little girl. He held her carefully, like she might break. His eyes widened slightly when she immediately put her head on his shoulder. Let's get you all out of this rain, he said, his voice tight with emotion. The inside of the Escalade was warm. Almost hot after the freezing rain. The leather seats were soft and clean. The car smelled like expensive cologne and new upholstery. It was like another world. Jordan settled into the back seat with Theo pressed against her side. The boy was already wrapping himself tighter in Q-Min's jacket, soaking in the warmth. Q-Min sat beside them, still holding Nari, who had fallen asleep almost instantly against his shoulder. The driver, a different man from the one Jordan remembered, kept his eyes forward, pretending not to notice the tension in the back seat. The car pulled smoothly away from the curb, wipers beating a steady rhythm against the windshield. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The only sounds were the rain, the wipers, and Nari's soft breathing. Jordan stared out the window, watching Georgetown slide past in a blur of wet lights. Her mind was racing. What would happen now? Where were they going? What would she tell the twins? What would Q-Min do when he learned everything? Mommy said you were dead. Theo's voice cut through the silence. Small but clear. Accusatory. Jordan closed her eyes. This was the moment she dreaded for years. The moment her necessary lie would be exposed. Q-Min went very still. Even his breathing seemed to pause. Did she? He asked after a moment, his voice carefully neutral. Theo nodded, his jaw set in that stubborn way that reminded Jordan so much of his father. She said our daddy died before we were born. His eyes narrowed. She lied. Theo, Jordan started, not even sure what she was going to say. Why did you lie? He demanded, looking up at her with hurt and confusion. Why did you tell us he was dead if he's not dead? How could she explain it? How could she make a 4-year-old understand that she lied to protect him? That knowing his father was alive somewhere would have been a burden too heavy for a child to carry? Sometimes, Q-Min said before Jordan could find the words, grown-ups make hard choices to keep the people they love safe. Theo turned his suspicious gaze to Q-Min. Are you really our dad? Yes. Then why didn't you find us before now? I tried, Q-Min said, his voice soft but intense. Every day for 5 years, I looked for you. But some people made it very hard to find you. Bad people? Yes. Bad people. Theo seemed to consider this. Are they still trying to find us? Q-Min's eyes met Jordan's over the boy's head. A silent question. How much should they say? We'll talk about all of that tomorrow, Jordan said firmly. Right now, we all need to get warm and dry and get some sleep. Where are we going? Theo asked, still not ready to let it go. My home, Q-Min said. It's safe there. Secure. We're not staying, Jordan said quickly. Just, for tonight. Cumin nodded, but something in his eyes told Jordan he didn't believe that. He thought now that he'd found them, everything would somehow work out. That they would stay. He didn't understand. He didn't know what she knew. Who had threatened her? What she'd learned in 5 years of running. But that was a conversation for later. When the kids were asleep. When they were somewhere private. The car turned onto a street Jordan didn't recognize, heading toward the river. The wharf development, she realized. It hadn't been finished when she left D.C. Now it was all lit up despite the late hour, expensive restaurants and apartments overlooking the water. You live here now? She asked. For the past 3 years, Cumin said. The penthouse has good security. Private elevator. No one gets in without being cleared. Of course. Always thinking about security. About protection. Some things never changed. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath one of the sleek high-rises. The driver swiped a card and the gate lifted, allowing them access to a private section separate from the regular resident parking. They pulled into a spot marked, Reserved, Ma. We'll go straight up from here, Cumin said. No lobby. No public areas. Always careful. Always 3 steps ahead. But it hadn't been enough to protect her 5 years ago, had it? The private elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Jordan stepped out, still cradling a half-asleep Theo, and tried not to react to the space around her. It was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the river, the rain creating a shimmering curtain of water beyond the glass. Everything was clean, minimal, expensive. Black and white and chrome. No personal touches. No photos. No clutter. It looked like a picture from a magazine. Not a home. The guest rooms are this way, Cumin said, still carrying Nari. There's a connected suite that might work for all of you. He led them down a hallway to a large bedroom with an attached smaller room. The main room had a king-sized bed with crisp white linens. The smaller room had a sofa that Cumin explained could be made up as a bed. There are clothes in the closet, he said. They'll be too big, but they're clean and dry. Bathrooms through there. Towels, everything you need. He was speaking quickly, nervously almost. Like he was afraid if he stopped talking, they might disappear again. Thank you, Jordan said, the polite response automatic after so many years of keeping her head down, of being agreeable to avoid attention. Cumin nodded. Carefully, he transferred the still sleeping Nari to Jordan's arms. The little girl stirred but didn't wake, instinctively curling against her mother's familiar warmth. I'll leave you to get settled, he said. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. Help yourself to anything. He backed toward the door, still watching them like they might vanish if he blinked. His eyes lingered on the twins. On Theo's serious face. On Nari's curly hair. His children. The ones he hadn't known existed until tonight. We'll talk in the morning, Jordan said. When they're asleep. He nodded. Whenever you're ready. Then he was gone, closing the door softly behind him. Jordan stood in the middle of the luxurious room, her wet clothes dripping onto the plush carpet, her children in her arms, and felt completely lost. What had she done? Coming back to D.C. Had she subconsciously wanted this to happen? Had some part of her been waiting for Cumin to find them all along? Or was it just exhaustion? The grind of 5 years finally wearing her down until she couldn't run anymore? Mommy? Theo was looking up at her, his eyes heavy with tiredness but still watchful. Still processing everything. Is that really our dad? Jordan took a deep breath. Yes, baby. That's your dad. Why didn't you tell us he was alive? It's complicated, Theo. I'll explain when you're older. You always say that. Because some things are hard to understand when you're little. Theo frowned but didn't argue further. He was too tired for a real fight. Let's get you both cleaned up and into bed, Jordan said, setting Nari down gently on the big bed. We all need some sleep. It took almost an hour to get the twins bathed, dressed in t-shirts that hung to their knees, and settled into bed. Jordan laid down between them, stroking their hair until they fell asleep. Nari went first, then Theo, still fighting it until the last moment, his eyes closing mid-blink as he tried to stay awake. Even asleep, they kept close to her. Always touching some part of her, a hand on her arm, a leg thrown across hers. They'd slept that way since they were babies. Always connected. Always making sure she was still there. Jordan lay awake long after they drifted off, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. The bed was the softest she'd slept in for years. The room was perfectly temperature controlled. No drafts. No street noise. No neighbors fighting through thin walls. Luxury she'd forgotten existed. And down the hall was Q-Min. Her husband. Legally, still her husband, they'd never divorced. The man she'd run from. The man she'd never stopped thinking about. The man whose family had threatened to kill her babies. Carefully, so as not to wake the twins, Jordan slipped out of bed. She found her bag, the waterproof one that contained everything important. The evidence she'd gathered. The cash she had left. The few photos of the twins as babies that she couldn't bear to leave behind in any of their quick escapes. She checked that everything was still there, then tucked the bag under the bed where she could grab it quickly if needed. Just in case. Old habits died hard. She took a quick shower, washing away the grime of days spent on the streets. The water pressure was perfect. The soap smelled expensive. There were fluffy towels waiting on a heated rack. In the closet, she found clothes as Q-Min had promised. Men's clothes, obviously his. She picked out the smallest t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants that she had to roll at the waist several times. Clean. Dry. Warm. Federal. Her children safe. It was more than she'd had in a long time. But at what cost? Jordan took a deep breath and opened the bedroom door. She had to talk to Q-Min. Had to tell him everything. Had to make him understand why she couldn't stay, no matter how much part of her wanted to. The hallway was dimly lit. Soft lighting that showed the way without being harsh. Jordan padded silently toward the main living area, her bare feet soundless on the hardwood floors. She found Q-Min sitting in the dark, staring out at the rain-washed view of the river. A glass of something amber sat untouched on the table beside him. He turned when he heard her approach. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Two people who had been through lifetimes of change in 5 years. "They're asleep," he asked finally. Jordan nodded. They were exhausted. "They're beautiful." His voice was thick with emotion. "Theo, he looks like you," Jordan finished. "Yes. He always has. And Nari. She's fearless. Too trusting. Too friendly. She's the one I worry about most." Q-Min gestured to the chair opposite his. Jordan hesitated, then sat. The distance between them felt both too large and not large enough. "Tell me what happened," he said quietly. "Tell me everything." Jordan took a deep breath. "Where to even begin?" "Your mother sent men to threaten me," she said, deciding to start with the most important truth. "The night I disappeared. You were in Seoul. They came to the apartment. They held a knife to my stomach and told me if I didn't leave, if I ever contacted you again, they would kill our babies." Q-Min's face went completely still. That deadly stillness she remembered from the rare times she'd seen him truly angry. His eyes, though, betrayed his shock. "My mother," he repeated, as if he couldn't have heard correctly. "Yes. They didn't say her name, but it was clear. They said someone who loves you sent them. Someone close to you." "That's not possible." "She wouldn't." "She did." Jordan's voice hardened. "She came to the restaurant before that. Watched me. Asked questions. She knew about me, about us, about the pregnancy." Q-Min's hand gripped the arm of his chair so tightly his knuckles went white. "Why? Why would she do that?" "Because I was wrong for you. Wrong family, wrong background, wrong color. Jordan's laugh was bitter. Take your pick. I would have protected you. If you had told me. I couldn't. They were watching me. They said they'd know if I tried to contact you. And they proved they could get to me whenever they wanted. They knew when you were traveling, Q-Min. They knew everything. He was silent for a long moment, processing. His brilliant mind connecting dots, seeing patterns. That's why I could never find you, he said finally. 5 years. The best investigators. Resources no one else has. And nothing. Not one solid lead. Someone was making sure of that. Dae-young. The name came out like a curse. My second in command. He oversaw the search. Could he be working with your mother? It's possible. She always liked him. Trusted him more than I did. Q-Min stood abruptly, pacing to the window and back. All that controlled energy suddenly needing an outlet. I'm going to fix this, he said, his voice taking on that calm, lethal quality that Jordan remembered from the few times she'd seen him truly dangerous. I'm going to make this right. It's not that simple. Jordan stood too, needing to be on equal footing for this. 5 years, Q-Min. 5 years of running. Of never feeling safe. Of teaching our children to hide, to be quiet, to never trust anyone. You can't just fix that. I can try. He stepped closer. Not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. Let me try. Jordan shook her head. It's not just about your mother. In the last 5 years, I've learned things. About your organization. About the people you work with. I have information. Evidence. His eyebrows rose slightly. Evidence? Insurance, she clarified. In case they ever found me. Something to bargain with. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You've been gathering dirt on my family business. Not to hurt you, Jordan said quickly. Never to hurt you. Just to protect myself. To have options. What kind of evidence? Financial records. Shipping manifests. Recordings of conversations about bribes, about moving certain products through ports without inspection. Names. Dates. Enough to cause real problems if it got to the right people. Q-Min ran a hand through his still damp hair. You've been busy. I had to be. I had to think long term. I couldn't run forever. He nodded slowly. Smart. You were always smart. Not smart enough to stay away from you in the first place, she said, the words coming out sharper than intended. His face showed the hit, but he recovered quickly. Fair enough. They stood in silence for a moment. The rain had slowed to a gentle patter against the windows. The city lights glimmered through the clearing sky. What do you want, Jordan? Q-Min finally asked. What do you need from me? It was such a simple question. But the answer was anything but simple. What did she want? Safety, yes. Security for her children. But also, peace. An end to running. A chance to build something stable. And deeper, in a place she'd tried to ignore for 5 years, she wanted what she'd lost. The connection. The understanding. The man who had seen her, really seen her, when no one else did. I don't know, she admitted. I haven't let myself want things for so long. Q-Min nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Then let me tell you what I want, he said. I want you and the twins safe. Protected. I want to know my children. I want a chance to be their father. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. And I want a chance to earn back your trust. Whatever that takes. It might not be possible. I'm willing to try if you are. Jordan looked at him, really looked. At the man she'd married. The man she'd run from. The man she'd never stopped loving, even when she told herself she had. Could they find their way back from this? Could they build something new from the wreckage of what had been broken? She didn't know. But for the first time in 5 years, she was willing to consider the possibility. One day at a time, she said finally. That's all I can promise. That's all I'm asking for. Outside, the rain stopped completely. The clouds parted, revealing a sliver of moon hanging over the Potomac. A new night. A new beginning, perhaps. Or just a pause in the storm that had been following them for 5 years. Only time would tell. Jordan woke up confused. The bed was too soft. The room too quiet. No traffic noise, no neighbors arguing through thin walls, no pipes clanking. Just silence. And the kids weren't pressed against her like usual. For a second, panic shot through her body. Then she remembered. Cumin. The rain. The Escalade. The penthouse. She sat up quickly. Theo and Nari were still asleep, sprawled across the huge king bed. After months of sharing tiny motel beds and shelter cots, they'd spread out in their sleep, taking advantage of all the space. Jordan checked her phone. 7:08 a.m. She'd actually slept almost 6 hours straight. She couldn't remember the last time that had happened. She slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake the twins. They needed the sleep. After checking that her evidence bag was still safely hidden under the bed, she pulled on the borrowed sweatpants and t-shirt from last night and quietly opened the bedroom door. The penthouse was silent. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the Potomac into a ribbon of gold. It was a clear day after last night's rain. Jordan followed the smell of coffee to the kitchen. It was bigger than their last apartment. All stainless steel appliances and marble countertops. The kind of kitchen you see in magazines. Cumin stood at the stove, his back to her. He was wearing a simple white t-shirt and black sweatpants, so different from the perfect suits she remembered him in. He was trying to flip something in a pan. It wasn't going well. You know there are people you can hire to do that, Jordan said, making him turn around. I wanted to try myself, he said. The twins will be hungry when they wake up. Jordan moved closer and peeked at the pan. Scrambled eggs. Very brown scrambled eggs. You've been running a crime syndicate for how many years, and you still can't cook eggs? I'm better at other things, he said, a small frown on his face as he looked at the overcooked breakfast. Clearly. Their eyes met over the pan of ruined eggs. The corner of Jordan's mouth twitched up slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. The first almost smile since he'd found them. Cumin seemed to hold his breath for a moment, like he was afraid any sudden movement might scare the moment away. I'll help, Jordan said, taking the spatula from his hand. Their fingers brushed. Just for a second. Throw these out and start over. You have more eggs, right? I had groceries delivered last night after you went to sleep, he said, opening the giant refrigerator. It was packed full. More food than Jordan had seen in one place in years. You thinking of feeding an army? She asked, eyeing all the food. I wasn't sure what the twins like. At this point, they eat whatever's available, Jordan said. They haven't had the luxury of being picky. Something flickered across Cumin's face. Sadness. Guilt, maybe. That's going to change, he said. By 10 a.m., the twins were up, fed, and exploring the penthouse with wide eyes. Nari took to it immediately. She ran from window to window, pressing her small hands against the glass, amazed at the view from so high up. She opened every cabinet in the kitchen, peeked under furniture, and asked a million questions. Why is your house in the sky? How many people live here? Can birds see inside the windows? Is that a real boat down there? Cumin answered each question patiently, following her from room to room. He didn't try to stop her exploration, just made sure she didn't get into anything dangerous. He watched her with a kind of wonder, like he still couldn't believe she was real. Theo was different. He stayed close to Jordan, holding onto her hand or her shirt. He watched Cumin constantly, his small face serious. Cumin didn't push. Didn't try to force a connection. When Theo finally asked a question, is this really your house? Min answered simply, yes. But you and your sister and your mom are welcome to stay as long as you want. We're not staying, Theo said firmly. That's up to your mom, Min replied. No argument. No pushing. Jordan watched this exchange from the kitchen where she was putting away the breakfast dishes. Min was good with them. Patient. Respectful. He didn't talk down to them or treat them like they couldn't understand things. He didn't try to buy their affection with promises or gifts. He just was there. Steady. Available. It was more than she'd expected. Around noon, Theo finally started to relax a little. He let go of Jordan's hand long enough to look more closely at a model boat on one of the bookshelves. You like boats? Min asked, keeping a respectful distance. Theo nodded. We saw big ones in Baltimore. Mom took us to watch them come in. That model is of a traditional Korean fishing vessel, Min said. My grandfather had one like it when he was young. Theo looked up, interested despite himself. In Korea? Yes. In a small coastal village near Busan. Mom showed us Korea in a library book once, Theo said. She said that's where you came from. My family did. I was born there, but I came to America when I was 12. Do you still talk Korean? Korean, yes. And I can teach you some words if you'd like. Theo considered this for a moment, then shook his head. Not right now. Whenever you're ready, Min said. No pressure. Just an open door. At 2 p.m., while the twins were napping in the guest room, the morning's excitement had worn them out. Min's phone rang. He checked the screen, and Jordan saw his face change. He walked out onto the balcony to take the call, closing the glass door behind him. Jordan watched through the window as he paced back and forth, his back straight, his free hand clenched at his side. The call lasted less than 2 minutes. When he came back inside, his face was carefully blank. Everything okay? Jordan asked. Fine, he said too quickly. Just business. Jordan had spent 5 years learning to read people, to spot lies, to sense danger. She knew when someone was hiding something. Who was that? She pressed. Min hesitated. My mother. Jordan's blood went cold. What did she want? To meet for dinner. Tomorrow night. Does she know? About us? About the kids? No. At least, she didn't mention anything. But they both knew that didn't mean much. Madame Ma was careful. Strategic. She wouldn't show her cards until she was ready. Are you going to go? Jordan asked. I have to. If I refuse, she'll be suspicious. And you're not going to tell her about us? Not yet, Min said. Not until we have a plan. Not until I understand exactly what happened 5 years ago. The weight of that secret hung between them for the rest of the afternoon. Jordan could see it pressing on Min's shoulders, adding tension to his movements. He kept checking his phone, like he expected more calls. More trouble. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Jordan and Min sat in the living room with cups of tea, trying to map out next steps. They need documentation, Min said. Birth certificates, social security numbers, medical records. They have birth certificates, Jordan replied. Just not with their real last name. Or yours. We can fix that. I have people who can create paperwork that will hold up to any scrutiny. More illegal things, Jordan said flatly. Sometimes illegal is the only option, Min countered. Unless you want to explain to authorities why 2 4-year-olds suddenly exist with no paper trail. He had a point. Jordan had been off the grid for so long, it would be hard to come back through official channels without raising red flags. What about school? Min asked. They should start kindergarten next year. They're smart, Jordan said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. Theo already knows his letters. Nari can count to 30. I've been teaching them what I can. There are good private schools that don't ask too many questions if the tuition is paid in advance. Jordan shook her head. I'm not staying forever. I know. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Time, he said simply. That's all. Time to figure this out together. Time to make a plan that keeps all of you safe, whether that's here with me or somewhere else. Jordan studied his face in the dim light. The face she'd once known better than her own. 5 years had changed him. Added lines around his eyes. A permanent furrow between his brows. But his eyes, those dark, intense eyes that saw everything, they were the same. I don't trust your mother, she said finally. I never will again. I understand. And I don't know if I can trust you. Not completely. Not yet. I understand that too. But the twins deserve better than what I've been able to give them. They deserve stability. Safety. Jordan took a deep breath. So we'll stay. For now. Until we figure this out. Relief washed over Cumin's face. Thank you. Don't thank me, Jordan said. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for them. I know. And that's why you're a good mother. The next morning, Jordan woke to the sound of laughter. Nari's high, bright giggle. It was a sound Jordan hadn't heard enough of in their hard life on the run. She followed the sound to the living room, where Nari had discovered a wooden chess set on a side table. She was holding up the pieces, examining them one by one. This one looks like a castle, she was saying to Cumin, who sat cross-legged on the floor beside her. That's a rook, he explained. It moves in straight lines. And this one? She held up the knight. That's a knight. It moves in an L shape. Like this. He demonstrated with his hands. That's a silly way to move, Nari giggled. Yes, but it's very clever. It can jump over other pieces. Nari's eyes widened. Like hopscotch? A bit like that, yes. Jordan watched from the doorway, something tugging in her chest. Theo was there too, sitting a little apart but clearly listening. His eyes kept darting between his sister and Cumin. As Nari continued exploring the chess pieces, her attention shifted to a small table nearby. On it sat a silver-framed photograph that Jordan hadn't noticed before. Nari picked it up. Who's this lady? She asked, bringing it to Cumin. Cumin's face froze for a second when he saw the photo. Jordan moved closer to see. It was a formal portrait of an elegant Korean woman in her early 60s. Beautiful in a cold, perfect way. Every hair in place. Designer clothes. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. Daddy, who is this? Nari asked again, and Jordan noticed how easily her daughter had started using that word. Daddy. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. That's my mother, Cumin said, his voice carefully neutral. Is she nice? Nari asked. Cumin paused. Just for a beat. Just long enough for someone who knew him to notice. She loves me very much, he said finally. Not a direct answer to Nari's question. Jordan caught that. And from the way Theo's eyes narrowed slightly, she suspected her observant son had caught it too. Jordan stepped fully into the room, making her presence known. Good morning. Cumin looked up, and their eyes met over Nari's head. A silent exchange. He knew she'd heard his non-answer. Knew what she was thinking. Mommy, look. Nari said, running to show Jordan the photograph. That's Daddy's mommy. I see that, Jordan said, taking the frame. She studied the familiar face. The face of the woman who had sent men to threaten her. Who had driven her into hiding for 5 years. Who had robbed her children of a normal life. She looks fancy, Nari observed. Yes, Jordan agreed. Very fancy. She handed the photo back to Cumin, who returned it to the table. Are we going to meet her? Theo asked suddenly, speaking up for the first time. Cumin and Jordan exchanged another look. Not right now, Cumin said. Why not? Theo pressed, his eyes sharp. Too sharp for a 4-year-old. It's complicated, buddy, Jordan said. Grown-up stuff. Theo didn't look satisfied with that answer, but he dropped it. For now. Jordan knew her son, though. He wouldn't forget. He'd ask again later. The day passed quietly. Q-Min had clothes delivered for Jordan and the twins, simple things in the right sizes, nothing flashy that might draw attention. A doctor came to the penthouse to check the twins, a pediatrician who asked no questions about their lack of medical records and who, Jordan suspected, was on Q-Min's payroll. They're small for their age, the doctor said, but otherwise healthy. A bit underweight. Some vitamin deficiencies we can address with supplements. Jordan tried not to feel judged. She'd done her best. She'd always made sure the twins ate, even when it meant she went hungry. As if sensing her thoughts, the doctor added, "You've taken good care of them under difficult circumstances. Many children who've experienced housing instability have far worse health outcomes." Jordan nodded, grateful for the small kindness. By late afternoon, Q-Min was getting ready to leave for dinner with his mother. He changed into one of his perfect suits, checking his reflection in the mirror with practiced precision. "Be careful," Jordan said, watching from the bedroom doorway. "She's dangerous." "I know," Q-Min replied. "I'll be careful. The security team will stay here while I'm gone. No one gets in or out without clearance." What if she already knows about us being here? Then I'll handle it. Like you handled it 5 years ago? The words came out sharper than Jordan intended. Q-Min turned to face her fully. 5 years ago, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know you were in danger. I do now. His phone chimed with a message. He checked it, his brow furrowing. "The car is waiting," he said, slipping the phone back into his pocket. "I won't be long. 3 hours at most." "Be careful," Jordan said again. "I mean it." Q-Min paused at the door. "I won't let anything happen to you or the twins. I promise." After he left, Jordan gathered the twins for dinner. She made simple sandwiches, the kind of meal she could prepare without thinking. Her mind was elsewhere, imagining the conversation happening across town between Q-Min and his mother. Would he be able to hide the truth from her? Would she see through him? Madame Ma was perceptive. Dangerous. And she had resources Jordan could only guess at. She just finished tucking the twins in for the night when she heard the elevator. Q-Min was back much earlier than expected. His face was pale, his movements stiff as he walked into the living room. "What happened?" Jordan asked, instantly alert to the tension in his body. Wordlessly, he handed her his phone. On the screen was a message that had arrived at 3:47 p.m., just before he left for dinner. "I see you found her." From a blocked number. "Did your mother say anything?" Jordan asked, her heart pounding. "No." That was the strange part. She acted completely normal. Asked about business. Talked about her garden. Not a word about you or the twins. "That's worse," Jordan said. "She's planning something." Q-Min nodded, taking the phone back. "Yes. She's always planning." He looked at the message again, his jaw tight. "The question is, who sent this? My mother? Dae-young? Someone else? Does it matter? They know I'm here. They know you found us. It matters because we need to know who we're fighting." Q-Min ran a hand through his hair, messing up its perfect arrangement. "The game has changed, Jordan. We need to move faster now." "Move how?" Jordan asked, fear climbing up her throat. "We need to find out exactly what my mother did 5 years ago. Who she's working with. And we need to use that evidence you've collected. Against your own mother? Your own organization? If necessary, yes." Jordan studied his face, looking for hesitation, for doubt. She found none. Just determination. And something that looked almost like relief. Relief that the hiding was over. That the truth, whatever it was, would finally come out. The game had indeed changed. They had moved from defense to offense. And Madame Ma had no idea what was coming for her. The next day was tense. Q-Min spent the morning on his phone, talking in hushed tones, checking security cameras, looking out windows. Jordan kept the twins close, not letting them out of her sight even for a minute. The message changed everything. "I see you found her." 5 simple words that shattered their fragile peace. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, Q-Min had made a decision. He came into the living room where Jordan was reading a book to the twins, his face set with determination. "I need to see my mother tonight," he said when the story was finished and the kids were playing with toys that had been delivered that morning. "Not tomorrow. Tonight." "Why?" Jordan asked, already feeling her stomach tighten with fear. "I need to know what she knows. How she knows it. Who sent that message?" Jordan nodded slowly. "I'm coming with you." "No." The word was firm. Final. "I'm not hiding anymore, Q-Min. I've been hiding for 5 years. This isn't about hiding. It's about safety." Jordan's laugh was bitter. "I've been safe for 5 years. It didn't protect me. It didn't protect the kids. This is different. My mother is dangerous. You think I don't know that?" Jordan's voice rose slightly before she caught herself, glancing at the twins who were still playing across the room. "I know exactly how dangerous she is. She's the one who sent men with knives to threaten her own grandchildren. That's why you can't come," Q-Min insisted. "If she did that before, what do you think she'd do if you walked into her house? Brought the twins into her territory? So I'm supposed to just sit here and wait? Let you handle everything? That's how we got into this mess in the first place." It was their first real argument since being reunited, and the tension between them was palpable. Both stubborn. Both scared. Both trying to protect what mattered most. "I know you want to face her," Q-Min said, his voice softening slightly. "I understand that need. But think about Theo and Nari. If something goes wrong, if both of us are there and something happens, who protects them?" Jordan looked over at her children. Theo was watching them now, his little face serious, always so aware of the undercurrents around him. Nari was still playing, blissfully unaware of the tension in the room. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll stay. Not because you're telling me to, but because they need one of us here." Q-Min nodded. "I'll handle my mother. I know how to talk to her." "Do you?" Jordan challenged. "Because it seems to me you never really knew her at all." The words hit their mark. Q-Min's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "I'll be back as soon as I can. The security team knows not to let anyone in. Not even me, unless I give the right code." "What's the code?" Jordan asked. "Annyeong," he said, the Korean word for hello. Something simple the kids already know. A small detail, but it showed he was thinking about their safety, about what would be easy for a 4-year-old to remember in an emergency. It was the kind of thoughtfulness that reminded Jordan why she'd fallen for him in the first place. "Be careful," she said, her anger fading into worry. "She won't show her hand easily." "I know." He hesitated, like he wanted to say more, maybe even reach for her. But he didn't. "I'll be back soon." Q-Min drove himself to his mother's house in Potomac. No driver tonight. He needed the space to think, to prepare. And if things went badly, he didn't want anyone else caught in the fallout. The roads were wet from an earlier rain, reflecting the streetlights as he headed northwest out of the city. Traffic thinned as he left downtown behind, the buildings giving way to increasingly larger houses set back from the road. His mind was racing, piecing together the puzzle that had been in front of him for 5 years. The search for Jordan that never produced results. The dead ends that always seemed to appear just when a lead looked promising. The investigators who'd report back with confidence, only to call days later saying the trail had gone cold. Again. And again. And again. It had felt manufactured. But he'd been too grief-stricken, too desperate to find her, to see the pattern. Dae-young had overseen the search. Dae-young had hired the investigators. Dae-young had been the one to gently suggest, after 2 years of nothing, that perhaps Jordan had simply left because she couldn't handle his world. That perhaps it was time to move on. And his mother. His mother, who had never liked the idea of him marrying. Who had especially disliked the idea of him marrying a black American woman with no family connections, no money, no status. His mother, who had always pushed for a suitable match with the daughter of a Korean business partner. His mother, who had seemed almost relieved when Jordan disappeared. How had he been so blind? The signs had been there all along. But he hadn't wanted to see them. Hadn't wanted to believe that the two people closest to him, the two people he trusted most, could betray him so completely. As he turned onto the long driveway that led to his mother's estate, Kyu-min felt something inside him hardening. The confused grief of 5 years was crystallizing into something else. Something cold and sharp and dangerous. The understanding was destroying him. And rebuilding him into someone his mother might not recognize. Madame Yoonji Ma's house stood at the end of a long, winding driveway lined with perfectly manicured trees. It was a massive colonial-style mansion, white columns gleaming in the exterior lighting, every window glowing with warm light that somehow still felt cold. The house was exactly like his mother, beautiful, impressive, and completely controlled. Nothing out of place. Nothing left to chance. A weapon disguised as a showcase. Kyu-min parked in the circular driveway and took a deep breath before getting out of the car. He straightened his tie, checked his reflection in the window. Old habits. His mother had always insisted on perfect presentation. The front door opened before he could ring the bell. His mother's housekeeper, Mrs. Park, no relation to Dae-young, greeted him with a formal bow. "Young Master Ma. Your mother is expecting you in the tea room." Of course she was. The tea room was where his mother always conducted her most important conversations. It was her territory. Her power base. Kyu-min followed Mrs. Park through the grand foyer, past the formal living room where no one ever actually lived, down the hallway lined with expensive art, and into the tea room at the back of the house. Madame Ma was seated in her favorite chair by the window, a delicate teacup in her hand. At 62, she was still strikingly beautiful. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her silk blouse and tailored pants clearly expensive but not ostentatious. She looked up when he entered, her face lighting up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Kyu-min. What a lovely surprise. I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow." A lie. She was always expecting him. Always 3 steps ahead. "Mother," he said, bowing slightly out of habit before taking the seat across from her. "I thought we should talk sooner rather than later." Of course, of course." She poured him tea from the elegant pot on the table between them. "You seem tired, my son. Is everything all right?" "Long week," he said, accepting the cup with a nod of thanks. She studied him over the rim of her cup. "I heard you had a visitor." Kyu-min's hand stilled for just a fraction of a second before continuing to lift the cup to his lips. "Who told you that?" His mother smiled. A small, knowing curve of her lips. A mother always knows. The game was beginning. The careful dance of words where nothing was said directly, where everything had layers of meaning. Kyu-min had been playing this game with his mother since he was old enough to speak. But tonight, he didn't have the patience for it. "How much do you know, mother?" "About what, dear?" Her face was the picture of innocence. "About Jordan." "Ah." She set down her cup with perfect precision. "That girl from years ago. The waitress. I wondered if you were still thinking about her." "She wasn't just that girl, mother. She was my wife." "Was she?" Madame Ma tilted her head slightly. "Such a brief marriage. Hardly seems worth mentioning. We're still married. We never divorced." Something flashed in his mother's eyes. Annoyance, perhaps. Or concern that he knew more than she thought. "Well, that's easily remedied. I know several excellent attorneys who specialize in quick, discreet divorces. I'm not looking for a divorce, mother." "No?" She picked up her cup again. "Then what are you looking for, Kyu-min?" "The truth." "The truth about what?" About what happened 5 years ago. The night Jordan disappeared. His mother's face betrayed nothing, but Q-Min had spent a lifetime studying her small tells. The slight tightening around her eyes. The way her fingers pressed just a fraction harder against the delicate porcelain cup. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean," she said. The girl left. It was unfortunate, but these things happen. She didn't just leave, Mother. She was threatened. By whom? His mother's tone was perfect, concerned, surprised, just the right note of indignation. "That's what I came here to find out." They continued the careful conversation through dinner, which was served by silent staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. His mother asked about business. Talked about her garden. Mentioned a charity gala coming up next month. Normal things. Safe topics. As if there wasn't a weight of secrets hanging between them. Q-Min played along, answering questions about shipment schedules, about the new development on the waterfront, about the mayoral campaign they were quietly funding. But inside, his anger was growing. His certainty solidifying. By the time dessert was served, a delicate green tea cake that had been his favorite as a child, he couldn't maintain the facade any longer. "What did you do?" he asked, setting down his fork with deliberate care. His mother looked up from her plate. "I don't know what you mean." 5 years ago. The night she disappeared. "What did you do?" The room went very still. Even the house seemed to be holding its breath. Madame Ma carefully placed her napkin on the table, smoothing it with practiced fingers. When she looked up, her mask had changed. The pretense of ignorance was gone, replaced by something harder. More honest, in its way. "I protected this family," she said simply. "I protected you." By threatening a pregnant woman? By removing an obstacle. She would have weakened your position. Our partners would never have accepted. "My partners?" Q-Min's voice rose, his control slipping. "My partners? She was my wife." "She was a mistake," his mother countered, her own voice remaining even. "A distraction. You weren't thinking clearly." "I was thinking perfectly clearly. I loved her." Love. His mother dismissed the word with a small gesture. Love fades. Legacy endures. "I did what was necessary to preserve what your father and grandfather built. What you will continue to build." Q-Min stared at his mother, really seeing her perhaps for the first time. This elegant, controlled woman who had raised him. Who had taught him about duty and honor and family. Who had wiped his tears when he was small and guided his education and supported his rise to leadership when his father died. A woman who loved him. A woman who would do anything for him. A woman who had destroyed the one thing that mattered most to him, all in the name of protecting him. "You sent men to threaten her," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Men with knives. Against a pregnant woman. My wife. Carrying my children." Something flickered across his mother's face. Surprise, perhaps. "Children?" "Twins," Q-Min said. "A boy and a girl. 4 years old now. Your grandchildren, Mother. The ones you nearly had killed." "I never told anyone to harm the children," she said sharply. "The men were instructed to frighten her, to make her leave. Nothing more. A knife against a pregnant belly isn't just frightening, Mother. It's a death threat. It was necessary," she insisted. "You were making a mistake that would have cost us everything. Our Korean partners would never have accepted an American wife, especially not a black one with no family connections. The alliances your father spent decades building would have crumbled. Everything would have been lost. So you decided for me," Q-Min said. "You took the choice out of my hands. I did what any mother would do. I protected my son from his own poor judgment." Q-Min shook his head. The last pieces were falling into place now. "And Dae-young? Was he working for you the whole time?" His mother didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. "He understood the importance of family," she said finally. "Of loyalty to something bigger than one person's desires. He sabotaged the search," Q-Min said. "It wasn't a question. Every time we got close, every lead that might have found her, he made sure it went nowhere. It was for the best, Q-min. If you had found her then, in those first few years, you might have thrown everything away. Now you've had time to mature. To understand the responsibilities of your position. And now? Q-min asked. Now that I've found her anyway. What's your plan, mother? Madame Ma studied him for a long moment. Then, instead of answering, she asked a question of her own. You found her, then? You're certain? Yes. And the children? My son and daughter? Yes, they're with her. His mother's face revealed nothing, but her hand tightened slightly on the edge of the table. She hadn't known about the twins until this moment. That was something, at least. You think this is over? She asked finally. That you can just bring her back and play house? I'm not asking for your permission. You should be. Her voice had taken on an edge he rarely heard. Because I'm not the only one who wants her gone, Q-min. I was the gentle option. What does that mean? His mother smiled. Cold. Knowing. Like she held a trump card he hadn't seen coming. The people I work with, the people who helped me 5 years ago, they're not as patient as I am. They've been watching. Waiting. And now that she's back. A chill ran down Q-min's spine. Who? Who are you working with? The better question, son, is, who in your organization has been reporting to me for the last decade? Dae-young. His second in command. His most trusted advisor. The man he'd left in charge while he came here tonight. The man who now knew Jordan and the twins were at the penthouse. Q-min's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, his blood turning to ice when he saw the message on the screen. From Dae-young, sir, there's a situation at the penthouse. Security team is being redeployed. Your orders? He didn't respond. He was already on his feet, moving toward the door. Q-min. His mother's voice followed him. Don't be foolish. You can't protect them. But he was already running to his car. If Dae-young sent that message, it meant he was the one in control. It was a way of gloating, of letting Q-min know he was too late. And Jordan was alone with the children. Back at the penthouse, Jordan had just finished tucking the twins into bed. It had been a long day of watching, waiting, worrying. Theo had finally fallen asleep, but only after extracting a promise that Q-min would come say goodnight when he got back. Nari had been easier, drifting off while Jordan was still reading their bedtime story. Jordan gently closed their bedroom door and headed toward the kitchen. She needed tea. Something calming for her nerves while she waited for Q-min to return. That's when she heard it. The soft chime of the elevator arriving. Relief washed over her. Q-min was back earlier than expected. Maybe things had gone well. Maybe his mother hadn't known anything after all. But then she heard footsteps. Multiple sets of footsteps. Q-min wouldn't have brought anyone back with him. Not tonight. Not without warning her. Fear replaced relief in an instant. Jordan's mind raced. The safe room, Q-min had shown her where it was. A hidden room off the master bedroom with reinforced walls, its own air supply, a phone line that couldn't be cut. If she could get the twins there. She turned, moving quickly and quietly toward the children's room. But before she reached it, a voice stopped her cold. Mrs. Ma. It's been 5 years. Did you really think you could just come back? Jordan slowly turned around. Standing in the living room were 3 men in dark suits. Professional. Familiar. The same men who had threatened her 5 years ago. The same men who had sent her running with a knife against her pregnant belly. And behind them, Dae-young Park. Q-min's second in command. His most trusted advisor. The man who had supposedly been searching for her for 5 years. He was smiling. A small, polite smile that never reached his eyes. And in his hand was a gun, pointed directly at the door behind which her children slept. We have unfinished business, Dae-young said softly. I think it's time we settled it once and for all. And that's where we stop. For now. I know. I know. You want to know what happens next. Is Cumin going to get there in time? What is Dae-young's endgame? Is Jordan going to use that evidence she's been carrying? And Madame Ma, is she really the final boss, or is there someone even higher pulling the strings? Those answers are coming. In part 2. But here's the thing. If you made it this far, if you watched this whole story, felt everything Jordan felt, understood why she ran, why she stayed, why she fought, then you're part of this community now. And this community? We show up for each other. So here's what I need from you. Smash that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story has traveled. Also, drop a comment, Team Cumin or Team Jordan? Who made the right choices? Who made mistakes? I read everything, and I love hearing your perspectives. Part 2 is coming soon. And trust me, what happens next is going to change everything. Until then, stay safe. Stay strong. And remember, every great story deserves to be heard. I'll see you in the next one.